I am Kenji. I'm Front's head of support, and I am joined by some amazing panelists today. So we're going to be talking about scaling delightful customer experiences with self-service support. Before we get started, I want to make sure that everything is working, the video, the chat. Could you let me know in the chat with a thumbs up, thumbs down, any kind of emoji, whatever your favorite emoji is, plop it in there. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Emily. Awesome. All right, before we get started, we are going to share a recording. We will not share what we recorded backstage, but we will share this live recording that we're doing right now with you. And I know we're running a few minutes late, but I'm going to make up for that, because don't you hate when you actually cannot ask questions to a webinar panel? I'm going to make sure that you have that time, about 5 to 10 minutes at the end. So I'm going to jump right in, do some quick intros, and we're just going to roll. So here is our all-star lineup today. Up to bat, we've got Max, VP of Support, co-founder at Birdie.
Hi, guys.
LinkedIn influencer. Follow, like, subscribe, smash the like button for the algorithm. We've got Nisha, the original Gongster herself, Director, Community and Digital Customer Success at Gong. Welcome, Nisha. And Susanna, the legendary support guru herself, customer experience advisor who helps startups like Loom and Airbnb scale. Let's just dive right in. So let's first talk about customer experience. And what I really want to ask you all about is how to create a personalized, valuable experience that leads to customer success. So Susanna, you've consulted at a lot of B2B tech companies. I'm curious on your approach. Is it one size fits all? Is it different? What are you hearing from your customers?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Big thank you to Front and the team. Super excited to be here talking about one of my favorite topics in CX. And I love the topic of like self-service and the one size fits all approach. I think I wrote about this on LinkedIn recently, and there was a really nice discussion coming from it, because I feel like it's not really what about like what's right or what's wrong. What could be right for me might be wrong for other people. But I do believe that the most successful self-service experiences come from companies that really value their support experience and believe that self-service equals support, right? So self-service is customer support, because it's such a critical part of the support operation, of the strategy. You have budget for it, you have, staffing for it. Sometimes it's not always possible, but, ideally you work towards that. And you're treating self-service as an opportunity. So it shouldn't be a generic solution. It shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all approach. And so kind of like going back to the conversation or to the question here, the working with clients and seeing how other companies are setting up their self-service operations, I'd say like there's 3 main topics that kind of like jump in terms of like things that we could all improve on. So accessibility being one of them, feedback loops, and segmentation. And I feel like with accessibility, if your users can't find self-service resources or they have trouble locating the information that they need, we need to work on it. We need to improve it. And so this can be because the channel is not the right channel. It can be because the keywords aren't, matching what users are searching for. It can be because the chatbot is, hidden away in a product page. And I talk about this because there's a very near and dear story to my heart about accessibility. And that is the story that we basically looked at our help center, and we found that a percentage of users for Loom specifically that were landing on the help center, they were basically abandoning the article and the help center also within like a few seconds. And obviously that's not good. We wanted people to stay, to learn, to solve their problems. And so we first looked at where are they coming from? A Google search. So not even from the product, not even from the platform, nothing like that. And what were they doing next? Nothing, because they just left. So we knew that there was an opportunity and we needed to improve our accessibility. And so the no-brainer here is really to find more ways to link to the help center from the product, which we did. But we also revamped the help center to include a sidebar navigation with other support topics to then improve how users navigated within the article. We also added links to other articles within the articles. And then we did basically whatever we could think of to increase the time that people were spending in the help center. And so if the user landed on the wrong article, that's okay, because then they could simply navigate to the correct one. And it worked. We saw a significant increase of time spent on the website, and the abandonment rate decreased, which was what we wanted. And so users now prefer to visit another article than to leave the help center. And I like telling the story because at the end of the day, people want to self-help. They don't want to wait around for support. And so we should be doing as much as we possibly can to make that journey as easy as possible. And this ties very well with the second topic that I mentioned, which is feedback loops. Your self-service resources needs to be reviewed and updated regularly. And this doesn't just mean their actual content, but also you should be looking at how your users are behaving during the self-service journey, right? So my suggestion here is collect as much data as possible, learn from it, test as much as you possibly can, and then optimize. Even if at the micro level, optimize or try to optimize. It'll make a huge difference. I promise. And then finally, on the segmentation piece, different customer groups have unique needs. They have unique behaviors, and so a generic self-serve one-size-fits-all approach might fail to meet those requirements. And so this is a specific problem with the segmentation. Free users might need, quick and easy FAQs. Enterprise customers have completely different needs. Maybe they need just like fast access to a human agent. And so the point here is that we, as support leaders, as people that work in support operations, we have to adapt and adjust to our users. It's not the other way around. Our users shouldn't have to figure out how to work with a chatbot. It should be intuitive. It should be an extension of the great customer experience that you are already providing in your ticketing, right? And so, yeah, that's basically it around kind of like what I'm seeing in the in the industry at the moment.
That's great advice. That's amazing. And speaking of great customer experiences, Nisha, I'm curious, you run community, and I know when you're creating content, you actually listen to them. You often reach out directly. What's your process for collecting customer feedback? How do you prioritize it? And actually, how do you decide what kind of makes it on the community itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, two ways to go about building what you think your customer needs. It's by looking at data and trying to understand and trying to create, a system, use systems, operations, processes to build that out. And then the other way is to simply ask them. And so we have a number of ways in which we collect that feedback. One of the ways that I really appreciate that we do for not just for the experience itself, but also for our product is we have literally a Google form within our community, which is actually our Visioneer hub. I started out at Gong building our community, but now manage all of our customer facing programs, experiences, or all in one place in one portal. And so it's really exciting because people can log in, they can simply go to the product tab and say, what feature that they want and why they want it. The community is inherent in which people are sharing best practices with each other. So it's really great sometimes people don't want to hear what you think that they might want. They have a very specific idea in their head, or they might have no idea at all. And they're like, I just want to meet someone that's like myself, or that's at a company that is at a similar size or the same industry. And they're able to find each other and ask each other questions and either connect one-on-one or in groups. And so we like to make ourselves known and allow people to come to us and directly give us feedback. But, really the idea of a community is that it's very much self-sustained. So when you build and launch a community and customers actually talking to each other, what happens is that initially you're the one that's creating content. You tell them what you think best practices are. And then over time, it kind of shifts where it's like, it becomes their creating most of the content, and then you're just sort of moderating and helping the conversation along. So that's how we do it.
Awesome. I mean, I love both approaches where you're really, I think that's the right way to go, right? What does the customer actually want? And this is a question for everybody, but Max, maybe we can start with you. it would not be a self-service webinar today without talking about AI. So what's the biggest opportunity for companies to leverage AI to enhance the self-service experience for customers? And maybe more importantly, like what's working, what's not working?
So I might answer like a bit different of what you're expecting, but I feel the biggest basically opportunity I feel for companies which leverage AI today is basically to make a real shift happen to the team. What I mean by that is like, I guess probably some of you have realized, maybe still haven't, but like all the jobs gonna evolve basically, and the scope of each of your jobs gonna evolve, right? Skills and knowledge too. So the opportunity I feel with AI is, to me, when I look at the support team, above all, like on the support people level, right? Because in a way, I think we as support people gonna become more than we were. And what I want to try to say here is like, we used to deal with basically like all the tickets in the queue, and basically AI gonna help us split what I call the low effort tickets, right? From the high effort one, right? And the low effort tickets not gonna be deal with support team hours, but more like brain work in a sense. So this is basically everything that Susanna was talking about, right? And the high effort ones gonna be like either real complex bug tickets to solve, or maybe like, you know, like advising customers. So I know it's not really the type of answer you were expecting, KG, but I don't know, when you ask me this question, it's really what comes to me and to support team. So
No, it's great. I mean, I want to hear like where your thoughts are. So that's the perfect answer for me. Susanna, Nisha, any thoughts on AI? Are you experimenting with it? What are you advising on, you know, when customers or companies are thinking about implementing it into their self-service strategy?
Yeah, we actually just did a launch on Monday called AI Summaries, or I've been nicknaming it Visioneers GPT. And so what's really exciting about that is it not only does it by search connect academy content, community content, help center, blog, all of our resources, but you can now build your own journeys and experiences. It's not perfect, by the way. Like but it needs to be out there so that people know that as a B2B company that you're innovating and you're thinking like a consumer, because we've all been using, you know, ChatGPT for a year and a half or however long, since September 2022, right? And so basically what you do is you ask it a question and you say, hey, like I just joined Gong, where do I start? And it will give you an answer. And then underneath the answer, it will say, hey, this is actually the places, the documentation that I found that will give you that answer. And so the idea is, you know, AI is only as valuable as the data that it's built on. So the idea is the more people that are using it, and I've literally told everyone, this is in alpha, this isn't even in beta, this is just, it's not perfect. But the idea is that we'll be able to train the algorithm over time to understand and learn what people want. So, you know, that's how Google got to be so great, right? So we're basically creating Gong Google. So I'm really excited about that. I think that there's a lot of opportunity in this space. I think a lot of people see it coming. I think every 6 months, it's going to continue to innovate, and it's going to be up to us, this group of people, everybody on this call, to kind of understand what's coming and then try their best to bring that forward as much as possible, because every 6 months there's going to be something new and we're going to have to continue to innovate. So I think the market will be a lot more forgiving if it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be done.
Love that.
Yeah, I'll just add like two quick cents following Maxime and Nisha's. Like, I absolutely love to hear what Nisha just said about like innovating and keeping up with the trends and like trying to show your customers that you are, you know, kind of like cutting edge technology. You have that cutting edge technology. Because for me, like AI, there's the piece about automating, sure, but where it gets like really interesting is around the predictive analytics piece. Like you're looking at, AI to predict customer needs, behaviors, helping you make decisions. Maybe like, that a customer is going to be up for contract renewal, and AI is going to help you understand, okay, guide the conversation, all of that. But also the content creation piece, right? So Nisha is talking about how AI can now, help have support answers, or, how it works, types of educational answers to Gong new users. That's amazing. Like you're looking at the data about a user, you're basically bringing it forward, you're helping them move along the onboarding process. And AI is basically kind of like this hand supporting and guiding you throughout, point A to point B, which I think is just amazing. And I can't wait to see the future and see how companies like Gong are going to be setting, the tone and leading the way towards what AI should look like in customer experience. So yeah, awesome.
Awesome. We're going to hop into scaling and streamlining support. So if you're ever curious of how do you actually scale through self-service channels, maybe you're an upstart team, maybe you're a team of 5 to 10, and you're wondering what is that next step. Max, what is commonly overlooked? Like, what have you seen that's like the most overlooked or commonly overlooked when it comes to delivering effective self-service?
So I think maybe we need also to get back, to the definition of self-service. What I can tell you is most of the time, like on the top of mind, they are thinking of basically like just a bot, answering their answer. But self-service can be like much, much more than that, And what I've seen is basically, if you look at the best team today, and this is not a shameless plug, right? They integrate other stuff in the self-service process. And I'm thinking, obviously, because I've seen a bunch of a customer here, her Birdie, basically adding, issue scoping or issue qualification, whatever you call it, in a sense that the best team have in mind that their goal is to reduce the customer effort. Basically, the ultimate goal. Yes, you get speed too, obviously, but I like to see it like you need to reduce, like the effort made by the customer. And if you can't answer basically your customer, it's your job in the self-service process to gather everything you can so a human can then reply to this answer. So I feel when you're asking what is overlook is like just finding an easy way, or just making sure your team has everything they need to solve the tickets needs to happen a lot in the self-service. It depends. But this is what I've seen so far, yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that myself. Thank you for that. And Susanna, I'm going to ask you to time travel a bit. Go back to your early days in Airbnb and Loom when things were, it's always crazy when you're starting to build out a support team and you're figuring out the analogy I use with my team when we're starting out is it's like driving down the freeway while you're trying to change your tire at the same time. Like you're trying to do things while you're going. What did you actually focus on first, like when it comes to self-service, and why did you choose to do that?
Yeah, well, you're taking me back to the most chaotic and fun times in my career. Those early days were such a roller coaster. And yeah, because time and money were such limited resources that we were really, really forced to be intentional and prioritize the areas that we thought or believed would have the most significant impact on both the user experience, of course, but also we have to admit on the success of the business, right? And so, again, I hope you don't mind. I like sharing stories about my experiences. I think it helps paint the picture. So let's travel back, as you mentioned, to 2017, early days at Loom. I was sitting down with Joe, the CEO and one of the co-founders, had a one-on-one with him, weekly one-on-one, nothing special. And I wanted to give him my, typical support update. But to my surprise, he didn't want to hear about the day-to-day stuff. Instead, he was like, if you think about Loom, when it has 1 million users, how would you support, or how would the support experience look like for them? And I was like, this is a hilarious question. Like, we have 100,000, maybe less users, and there's no guarantees that Loom is going to work as a product. So as you can imagine, like 1 million felt really, really far away. And I had problems that I needed to be fixed that day, not, when we hit 1 million. So I wanted to talk to Joe about that. I didn't want to think about the future problems. But now, it's been 7, 8 years, I don't even know. I'm looking back and I realized like that question helped me immensely. And even when I'm working with my clients, I'm asking them like, what would you like your customer experience, your support experience to look like if you have a 10x user growth? And the reason for this is because it helps them and it helps me work backwards. It helps us, paint a blue sky scenario, figure out what type of goals we need to achieve to get to that blue sky scenario, and then review what do we have today, what is our current setup, and what needs to change in order to start working towards that blue sky scenario. And so to give you a practical example, after that conversation with Joe, I went out and I said, okay, what do we need to fix to get to that 10x, to get to 1 million users? And it's stability and bugs, right? So we're looking at, among other things, but let's look at stability and bugs first. So I went and I looked at number of tickets related to technical issues, and then I multiply it by 10x. So then I asked myself, can we hire 10 more technical engineers to solve these? No, or 10x more, right? And is this the experience that we want to give to our users, like over and over again, and have them experience stability issues, bugs? Like, they will join and they will churn, they will join and they will churn, but like 10x of that. We don't want that. So definitely not the experience that we want to give them. And so what do we need to do to improve the situation? And therefore, what are the things that we need to prioritize when it comes to self-serve, when it comes to our support experience, when it comes to just everything related to strategy? And so it's collecting data, just get data, churn surveys for the technical issues. We experimented with retention plays, and we learned a lot. And ultimately, we were able to reduce our technical contact rate significantly. And it was very impactful because it gave us the room to grow our user base with the confidence that users would then have a better experience, and also that we wouldn't struggle to provide, timely and efficient support to those who actually needed it. And so after all this, my point here, the takeaway that I want for you to have for this question is that basically, sometimes it feels like everything is on fire. Like, how do you prioritize your areas of action when it comes to your self-serve? Do you go chatbot? Do you go help center? Everything might feel like it's a P0. So I encourage you to take a moment to think really and just like work backwards. This type of exercise should give you clarity or a little bit more perspective so that you can better prioritize what needs to happen with your support strategy. Again, there's no right or wrong. What works for me at Loom might not work for you at your company. And so it's just basically taking a step back, thinking about the future, and then breaking it down step by step, and then tackling it. Easy.
That sounds easy.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great blueprint and a segue into, okay, so now we've listened to the customers, we've thought about how we're going to 10x and scale blue sky. So Nisha, how do we actually measure the ROI specifically for the community? Like, what are some metrics that you're tracking? And I even hear you have a certain framework to measure performance that I know we'd all love to hear about.
I totally do, but I just was so inspired by Susanna and Maxime. If we could just go back to streamlining and scaling support, I think it would be really helpful for folks on the call to sort of understand the flow that we have at Gong and the way that we're thinking about it, just practically. I love coming to these webinars and understanding very practically like what a company does and maybe pieces that I can implement. So I think whenever people are looking, just for a little bit of context, I did launched the community 3 years ago, but I sit in support. I report to our VP of support, and I also manage the long tail of our business. So I also manage our pooled CSM team, so all our SMB team as well. So with that context in mind, I'm thinking about how that long tail customer is going to be able to either get questions to get the answers to their questions, or if they don't know what to ask, they figure that out. So the flow is, most people start out in Google, right? Or maybe even in your product, and they're looking for maybe a specific question, an answer to a question. Or what you do is you put them through a we'll just call this a self-serve journey, but it's almost like marketing. So my background is marketing, is 15 years in marketing. And we'll literally send them an email and say, you said these are the outcomes that you're trying to achieve as a business. Here are some of the things that we've seen other companies like yourself do within the product to achieve those outcomes. So they're like in Google, they have also this self-serve journey that we're taking them through. And with that self-serve journey, we take them to visioneers.gong.io, which is their self-serve portal, where they can also find ways to be able to help themselves. If they still can't find the answer to their question, or they still don't know, they want to learn more, they can go to support.gong.io, where we again have another chatbot where if you want to use it, you can. If you just want to log a support ticket and talk to someone, you can also do that. And then on top of that, we have teams that are super technical in nature, and we have our CSMs that are waiting to be able to answer like account related best practices workflow questions. And then on top of all of that, and this is my favorite part, is how do we close the loop with that? It's like, okay, we don't just end in support. How do you understand, what you need to have a support tip of the week? Our team on support knows what people are asking about the product every week, every day. It changes people's questions. And then we pump that back in and we put that back in the self-serve portal. And so then when people go back into Google and we'll search for something, because our SEO is so good, they'll find the answer to their question proactively. So it's this like really nice feedback loop that I think is really how you scale outcomes, you scale CSM, you scale support. It's a hodgepodge. Like, you just heard my background: CSM, marketing, support, like all these different things are required in order to really truly scale support.
Amazing. I know we're running short on time, and I want to get to questions, so I'm actually going to do a little off the cuff modification of this question. So I'm going to ask each of you, when you're thinking about ROI, whether it's for the community, your self-serve deflection model, or any kind of self-service support you're doing, what's one metric that you think is a good indicator of tracking success? And maybe I'll start with Susanna.
That's a really great question. So looking at ROI, what is a metric that is an indication? This is such an important topic, because I see companies measuring success with kind of like more traditional metrics, but I feel like there's a massive opportunity here. And we should be tweaking the traditional metrics to have more layers of context, right? So it's very easy to report on the metrics that we're all familiar with, them being, deflection rate or customer satisfaction or volume. And I do believe that like these metrics provide a really good starting point, but I also feel like they might fail to capture kind of like the full picture, right? And so I think that our goal as leaders should be to really understand not just what happened or what is happening with the process or the journey that we have set up, but why and how we can make it better. And so to really answer your question, Kenji, looking at specific metrics, you could look at drop-off points in the chatbot interaction, for example, and you monitor, where customers abandon the chatbot interaction. But so essentially you're asking, is the chatbot successfully deflecting, or are the users abandoning the experience because they feel frustrated? So these are two very different outcomes. Or you can use the same logic and apply it to resolution rate, right? You can look at it as a standalone metric, but you can also ask a few deeper, more detailed questions that then give you a better understanding of the ROI of your setup, right? And how your self-service resources are performing. So for example, you could ask questions like, at what point do users abandon the chatbot interaction? And how do these points then relate or correlate with specific topics in your experience? Or what is the retention rate for users who resolved their issues via the chatbot compared to the ones that contacted the support directly and spoke to a human agent, right? Or even like looking at the help center, how often do users use the chatbot after unsuccessful searches in the help center, and then what is the resolution rate for those queries? And you basically try to figure out this relation and answering these questions to give you starting points, then explore even more detailed questions. And I know you asked me for one metric, and I've just been rambling about many, but this is such an interesting question, and I think that the framework can just be applied to everything that you do in customer support, not just the self-service strategies. I'll stop now because it's time, but I just have so many thoughts and things about like this topic in particular. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, no, you're getting some love in the chats. Yes to rambling. And yeah, I don't think there's one metric, just like there's no one size fits all approach to your support strategy. Like there's not one metric that's the one, but Max, like what's one or two or a few? What are ones that you tend to use?
Yeah. So first, I agree so much with Susanna with everything she said. I need to say that because, but you sometimes still need, especially when you're starting to change things, to have like one North Star metric, these kind of things. What we're looking at, actually, we're looking at two for the self-service. Is you have different name for the one. So we call it self-service effectiveness ratio, but some other call it self-service resolution ratio. Some other calls it human escalation ratio. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is like we measure the proportion of customer cases that are successfully resolved through self-service option. And in self-service options, like it's like, like AI, knowledge base, blah, 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 without the need for human interaction compared to those that require escalation to human agents. But once you have that, we compare this with basically the customer effort score, because if this ratio goes a good way, but the experience goes down, this is bad too. And I will finish with, even when we are looking at those ratio, like these are like North Stars, but ultimately where we get the most the most and the best insight is basically just asking with a text field customers what's wrong or what we could improve. And sometimes just having like 10 customer writing you, hey, I couldn't search this, I did, just give you so many more ideas of how you can improve that just a metric. So I'm a big fan on looking almost on a personal level to improve support than at a big picture.
Yeah,
so that would be like my advice.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, Max. And we've got a couple minutes before we hop into questions. So Nisha, I think this is a good question for you and for the folks who are looking to leverage the community. Is there a metric or an ROI success metric that you like when measuring the community?
Totally. Yeah. ARR influence and expansion. So I can tell if people have spent our entire ecosystem is open to the public. So if people are actually prospects, they're not customers, they're spending time in this self-serve portal, and then they become customers, we can actually quantify the ARR impact that has. So being a touch point in the sales cycle is really important. I'd love being like a hidden marketer in customer success, because it's really great to be able to, I can use the marketing skills to like tie that in and see that. And then even more deeper than that, the people that are engaged and are spending more time in the community and the key personas, like exec sponsors, our RevOps, our admins, we see that those people actually buy 3 times more Gong than folks that don't. So being able to actually track and measure that has been pretty helpful for us.
That's huge. I think that's something most support teams are trying to figure out, is how do you tie it to ARR? And that's a great example.
Yeah.
It's great. And, I've, the other, I guess, suggestion that I would have for folks on this call is spend time with your CFO and just kind of walk them through your business and just say, hey, like, these are the numbers. I did this maybe 6 months ago, a couple of times with Tim Ritters, our CFO is awesome, and said, this is how I'm thinking about tracking the impact that we have on the business, what do you think? And he was like, okay, well, this is weak, this is okay, and this is awesome. So the things that were weak, I just stopped tracking, because ultimately the CFO will help gauge whether or not what you're doing is actually efficient, right? We might think what we're doing is efficient, but they see something else. So, and they've also been around for a really long time. So that's another tidbit of advice I have.
Yeah, that's great advice. The cross-org alignment is huge in support. Okay, let's hop into questions. I promise we will make some time. So we will get to Celia's first. So to the panel, how do you differentiate between going through the chat flow versus a support ticket? Do you have a ticket form to get directly in touch with an agent, and then the chatbot that contains self-service, possibly with AI, or do your customers know what option to take?
I just spoke once, so I'm letting other giving space.
I was gonna say I can jump in quickly and just offer like a couple of thoughts here before handing it back. But this is a great question, because I think like at the end of the day, it's a strategic decision, right? And so you're looking at a couple of things. You're looking at what do your customers need, what does your user base need from you, and also what makes sense financially. Some companies are not able to provide a chatbot. They're expensive solutions. What can you do instead? Are they more expensive though than hiring for support? Maybe not. And so at the end of the day, it all comes down to what you can do as a company, and sometimes it's a mix and match. To be even more specific, you're asking, Cecilia, and thank you for like, how do you differentiate between going to a chat flow and a support ticket? In companies that I've worked with, we had both options. Most recently at Loom, and so we had a form in our help center that everyone could go through. It had categorization. You can kind of like choose the options. And then if we had an article that would match that choice, we would try to self-serve and help you not submit that ticket, because we're giving you the information. And then we also had a chatbot built into the product that was the support option for free users. And we just let our enterprise customers contact support directly. But if our free users use the chatbot and they hit kind of like a little roadblock, or they weren't being helped in the way that they wanted to, we were also offer to create a support ticket. And so the point here is that I think that these two can work together. They're different channels, but you can kind of like seamlessly connect them in a way that makes a lot of sense for your customer journey in particular.
That's great. And we've got 2 minutes. So I'm going to combine 3 questions that I see here. They're about AI and why customers are so hesitant to interact with AI. But maybe Max or Nisha, how do you balance that line? Like, how do you balance the AI and the human support? What's kind of your mindset?
I can take this one, but I feel first, there is no like one rule for each. What you need to understand is like it really depends of like the type of product you're selling, and like the type of, the customer base you have, right? Because like if your customer base are engineers versus, I don't know, dentists or teachers, obviously like, it's not the same thing. So I feel people are asking those questions, but like eventually you'll get AI like, I feel everywhere in the support things, but like where you're gonna put like the sweet points really depends on your business, and this is gonna evolve over time. And as Susanna mentioned soon, you're gonna have different persona and segmentation within like your own customer base, and those can be addressed differently too, right? So as a rule of thumb, like me, I would say like whatever could be answered without back and forth should be answered by AI. And if you need one or more back and forth, this should be answered by humans. But it's just like, like a rule of thumb. So it's much more complex than that.
Yeah, that's great. I love the actionable rule of thumb advice that we can all take home after this. And speaking of, we're exactly at time. Thank you all so much for all of your questions. If we did not have a chance to answer them, I promise we're going to follow up. You can get the answers to this on the Front community. Shout out to the community self-service channel. But we will answer all your questions there. We're also going to share a link in the chat, and keep an eye out for the recording and any post-event comms. Huge thank you to our amazing panel, and thank you all for being patient with us and joining us today. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kenji.
You got it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.